Hours will persist a bit into the evening, particularly across the northern half of the UK. We could still see some wintry flakes across the very higher ground of Scotland. They will ease their way off a bit more as we head into Tuesday, but still a scattering first thing in the morning. It's this rain that's then lingering out in the southwest that we certainly have our eye on for, and that will be pushing its way in for later in the afternoon. And as the low pressure centre develops, it does have the potential to bring quite disruptive winds to western areas of the UK. So we do now have a wind warning in force for Wales, Western England and up into coast of the North Channel for Scotland and Northern Ireland. So do stay up to date with the forecast on that. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your Easter Sunday. Bye-bye.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Happy Easter! Thank you for joining me this Sunday lunchtime for GB News Sunday. I'll be with you until 3 p.m. Now, I hope you've had a relaxing Easter Sunday morning. Please do let me know what you've been up to. Have you been to church? Perhaps you've had a nice walk in the English countryside. Perhaps you're pottering around in the garden, listening to us on the radio. Maybe you're sitting down for a delicious lunch after an Easter egg hunt. Please do send me any photos or Easter messages and we'll share them later on in the show. We love to see them. So this hour, we will be discussing Labour's political campaign strategy. They're going nasty. Gutter politics is what some people are saying. Sources say that instead of backtracking, they're going to instead double down. But does being nice win an election? We'll be debating that. Then it's been revealed that only 215 of the 45,000 migrants who crossed the Channel by small boat last year have been removed. Hardly surprising, perhaps, considering cases are now taking longer than ever to be processed. I'm asking, does the Home Office need to get a grip? Also, in a rather bizarre turn of events, rather amusing actually, on Friday night, a production of the Bodyguard musical in Manchester was interrupted by audience members who were trying to sing "I Will Always Love You" over the actors. The finale was abandoned. Security guards stormed the auditorium and forcibly removed fans who were loudly singing along. Fights broke out. Even the riot police turned up. I'll be getting the views of my panel on that one. Have we lost all sense of decorum? Should alcohol be banned from productions? Clearly some of us can't be trusted. Or were they just having a bit of fun? Before we get stuck into all of that, let's get the latest news headlines with the inimitable Ray Addison.
Good afternoon. 1 minute past one, here's the latest. Patients face unparalleled levels of disruption when junior doctors start a 4-day strike on Tuesday. Now, that's the warning from NHS National Medical Director, Professor Stephen Powis. He says he's very concerned with hospitals facing nearly 100 hours without up to half of their medical workforce. The NHS Confederation says 250,000 appointments could be postponed. Police investigating the SNP's finances have reportedly seized a luxury motorhome. According to the Mail on Sunday, the Niesman Bischoff camper, which can sell for around £110,000, was removed from a house in Fife. It was taken at the same time that police searched the home of Nicola Sturgeon and her husband, Peter Morell. The leader of the Scottish Conservative Party, Douglas Ross, told GB News, "People want answers."
It's now been going on for, I think, 18 months, almost 2 years. It's been an extensive inquiry, and we saw that Peter Morell was interviewed for almost the maximum 12 hours, released without charge, but pending further investigation, and a significant amount of evidence taken away from both their home and SNP headquarters. So I think people want answers, and those answers have to come from Nicola Sturgeon, from Hamza Yusuf, and those at the top of the SNP.
The mother of Olivia Pratt-Corbell has told the Sunday Mirror that the law should be changed to force all criminals to attend their sentencing. Cheryl Corbell has spoken out after her daughter's killer refused to appear in the dock as he was jailed for a minimum of 42 years. Justice Secretary Dominic Raab says he is planning to change the law. A new survey suggests that more than 1 in 10 teachers have been physically assaulted by a pupil in the last year. The Teachers' Union says they've been kicked, bitten and punched by pupils, whilst more than 1 in 4 have faced verbal abuse from a parent or a carer. The findings have been released during the union's annual conference in Glasgow. Today, delegates are voting on a motion which suggests that assaults are now seen as a normal part of teaching in too many schools. The government is expected to crack down on the illegal sale of e-cigarettes to children with a new illicit vapes enforcement squad. The Department of Health and Social Care says task forces will carry out test purchasing at various shops. They'll also share intelligence with local authorities. The squads will have the power to remove those illegal products at shops and at borders. Thousands of expectant mothers are set to receive a maternity allowance boost of 10.1%. The increase will see payments go up by £15.82 a week. Now, that equates to around £617 over the 39 weeks that it can be claimed. The Department for Work and Pensions says this automatic increase will benefit around 40,000 parents this year. China's military has carried out simulated precision strikes on Taiwan, the country's state broadcaster claims. CCTV says forces continue to encircle the island as part of 3 days of drills focused on the disputed territory. Forces have reportedly been focusing on key targets on land and in surrounding waters. Taiwan's defense ministry has also reported multiple Air Force sorties. Well, the King, Queen Consort and other senior royals have attended an Easter church service at Windsor Castle. It was held at St George's Chapel and was the first of Charles's reign. The occasion falls on the second anniversary of Prince Philip's death. Both he and the late Queen are interred in the grounds of the 15th century chapel. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to GB News Sunday.
Now, there's been a huge row caused by a controversial tweet by Labour claiming Rishi Sunak doesn't think paedophiles should be jailed. It's been branded appalling, nauseating and shameful by MPs from other parties, but shadow cabinet ministers have actually defended the tweet. If you haven't seen it already, the social media post has an image of a smiling Rishi Sunak next to the message, "Do you think adults convicted of sexually assaulting children should go to prison?" Rishi Sunak doesn't. And it's not the only tweet like this from Labour attacking Rishi Sunak personally. Another tweet has a picture of the Prime Minister next to the message, "Do you think an adult convicted of possessing a gun with intent to harm should go to prison?" Rishi Sunak doesn't. It's quite catchy. Labour reportedly plans to keep these dirty tactics going until the next election. But is this the way to win one? Joining me now is political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Thank you very much, Matthew, and research fellow at the Bow Group, Benjamin Loughnane. Thank you very much for joining me. Happy Easter to you both. Matthew, what do you make of this, firstly? I mean, it is probably a little bit tasteless, but is this just election campaigning for you?
Yeah, my principle on this sort of stuff, I was quite shocked when I saw, very shocked when I saw it. My way forward here is when they go low, and the Tories have gone very low in the past, you stay high. We just think back to a year or so ago when Boris Johnson was trying to deflect from Partygate. And in the House of Commons, he made that outrageous suggestion that Keir Starmer had somehow let Jimmy Savile off the hook. And that was utter nonsense, and Starmer was very angry about that and upset about it, and people were calling him a paedophile protector in the street, and asked about it, I think, by a Times journalist much later on. He said it was hard to like a man, i.e. Boris Johnson, who accused you of that sort of stuff. And there was widespread outrage. I was one of those who was very angry about it. Therefore, when your side, and I would say very loosely, I'm on the side of Labour. I would like to see a Labour government after these 13 years of sort of carnage under the Conservatives. But when your side then does something not entirely dissimilar, I don't think it's gone quite as far as what they did to Starmer, but when they do something quite similar, you have to call it out. And while I'm broadly speaking sympathetic with Labour, I'm also a journalist. And as a journalist, it's critical that you hold power to account. Labour aren't in power yet, but Starmer is clearly in a position of great authority as the leader of the opposition. And I don't want to see him sinking to the sorts of levels that the Tories have sunk to. It's absolute nonsense, the idea that Rishi Sunak doesn't want to see people who are convicted of sexually assaulting children go to prison. Of course he does. There are so many ways in which to hold this Tory government to account over the last 13 years. Just look at what has happened to policing. Look at what has happened to neighbourhood policing. Look at the conviction rate for rape. Look at the rate at which people who are accused of rape actually see any sort of justice, any sort of due process. There is so much to have a go at, but just don't personalise it with that sort of fake news.
So, Benjamin, Matthew says, when they go low, we go high. That should be the mantra. I think that was Michelle Obama's mantra. I think she said that a few times. Yeah. But, Benjamin, is this tasteless smear campaign? I guess you could call it that. Is it just revenge, basically, for the accusations around Jimmy Savile?
Yeah, I think there is some aspect of that, but also it just seems to me to be, it's going to massively backfire. I don't quite understand why they've done this. When you're so far ahead in the polls, why would you turn to these sort of tactics? What they were doing before seemed to work. Keir Starmer's policy of having no policies and taking no positions and taking absolutely no stand on anything and being very quiet and very cultivated and very sort of respectful and not really doing anything too outrageous or offensive. That seemed to be working for them. And now they've done an about turn and started basically taking the Prime Minister's face and sticking it next to the word, the sexual abuse of children in a way to stir up these sort of aggressions and anger. But it just seems to have backfired on them. I don't think this is going to reflect well on the Labour Party. And bear in mind, we're in the middle of local elections at the moment, so we may actually see this play out. If Labour do underperform in the elections, I think people will point to this as the source of why they have.
But Matthew, I'll play devil's advocate here a little bit. I'm not sure what I think. I think that maybe there's a bit of pearl clutching going on. Apparently, Labour strategists are absolutely delighted. This tweet alone has had over 20 million views. It's clearly gone viral absolutely everywhere. Is it the best thing to have people talking about you?
Well, look, the fact that it may work, I'm ambiguous as to whether it will work. I think it may alienate a lot of people like me. Labour may say, well, you'll probably vote Labour anyway, and I might. But it's a real risky strategy to take your sort of core votes for granted. It may work. It may filter through. As you say, it's been seen an absolutely enormous amount of times, and there is an argument to suggest that now people will associate Rishi Sunak with one or two of the slurs that have been made about him. That doesn't mean it's right. For me, I want politics to be elevated out of the gutter. So much of the populism under Boris Johnson, and perhaps a little bit under Liz Truss, and then with Rishi Sunak, who in some ways is a respectable leader, but rehired, unsacked, basically, Suella Braverman, who I think is doing terrible damage in the culture wars. The Tories have really sunk to very low levels. And for me, if I want to have hope in politics, I want to look to a brighter future. I want people across the country to feel a little bit like I felt, and many tens of millions, or certainly millions, felt in 1997 when Tony Blair and New Labour came to power. We could talk endlessly about mistakes they made, but certainly at that point there was at least some hope, some aspiration. I don't want a sort of Tory-like party to replace the Conservatives. We deserve better than that. I'm someone who wasn't able to vote Labour under Jeremy Corbyn's toxic leadership twice. I turned to the Green Party. I want finally, as someone who's moderately on the left, some people might call me a sort of raving lefty. It's not true. I'm moderately on the left. I'm quite trenchant in the way I express some of my opinions. But I would say I'm progressively left-leaning, and I want to be represented. And I think the vast majority of the country is somewhere in the middle, a little bit to the right, perhaps a little bit to the left, bang in the middle. We deserve our politics to be elevated out of the gutter. The Tories have put it in the gutter, and it's up to Keir Starmer and others to retrieve that. Just one really important thing here. It's fascinating that the Labour have doubled down on this, because this ad has been attacked right across the party, from people well to the left of me to people such as myself, more towards the moderate centre. And I was really surprised and shocked that the director of strategy for Keir Starmer, Deborah Mattinson, herself retweeted that. This means that this goes right to the top. Keir Starmer himself might not have seen it, but it has been approved, given the seal of approval, by his director of strategy. So in terms of where we go from now, I think we need more voices like mine to be heard to make sure that this election coming up does not go really, really dirty. There's no need for fake news. As Freddie said, Labour are soaring high in the polls. There's been a bit of a dip in one of them recently. Hold your dignity, otherwise risk losing the election.
Yes, it does. It does all look a bit shameless. But Benjamin, on the other hand, the Conservatives do have a poor record when it comes to the justice system. There are many statistics going around as a result of this. Only 1.6% of rapists are charged. These are pretty abysmal statistics. If this gets people talking about that, gets people talking about law and order, gets people connecting the Labour Party with law and order and criminal justice, then that's a win, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's an argument to be made for that. In communications terms, it's not bad to have an outrageous advert which gets people speaking, as long as the substance below it is something worth speaking about. But unfortunately, the statistics that they rely on in these adverts go back to 2010. And at that time, Rishi Sunak was not a member of Parliament. He was nowhere near the government. So sticking his face on it doesn't really, reflect the truth. However, Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions and arguably does bear responsibility for this very poor record on justice himself. Also, previously, Keir Starmer has come out and criticised the government for being far too involved in justice and said, leave it to the courts, leave it to the judges, leave it to the people who make those decisions, within the justice system. Stop having executive oversight on justice and leave it to the system which works. So he's previously said the government shouldn't be getting involved in these decisions. And also, he was the Director of Public Prosecutions at the time that he's talking about. So he's just as responsible, if not more responsible, than Rishi Sunak. So the problem with having this outrageous advert is people then look into the details and find out, no, he was the one who was guilty.
Well, before we move on, Matthew, you've been shaking your head throughout what Benjamin was just saying. Go on, have your word.
No, I wanted to see if I could agree with Benjamin on quite a lot, but I have to depart from him on this. I mean, Keir Starmer has not been a director of public prosecutions for some time now. Benjamin is right that to some extent justice absolutely has to be kept out of the hands of politicians. That's called the rule of law, the separation of powers. That you're absolutely spot on that. Where I think it's wrong is that the core reason why we've got so much antisocial behaviour. I live in West London. I see loads of it. You can smell cannabis on almost every street. You see drug drops. Instead of these the delivery bike people who come along on their mopeds delivering food, some of them are delivering drugs. They forget the fact that they're incredibly dangerous the way they whiz around the streets. There's absolutely no attempt to keep everyone else safe, and the police seem powerless or not willing to do anything about it. There is a certain lawlessness in the capital. And I love London. I've lived in London all my life. I'm an absolute massive advocate of London. I don't think I'll ever move away. But there is a real problem there with law and order. Why? Surely a massive part of that is because the Tories, they're now starting to repopulate the police force, but the Tories slashed 20,000 police numbers in the police force. 20,000. Look at community policing. Remember that amazing constable or whatever he was who resigned because he won an award from Theresa May a few years back in Manchester, and he resigned because he just didn't feel he could do the job anymore. They are under-resourced, and if you don't have police officers on the street, if you don't have any sort of visible presence, how on earth can you maintain law and order?
Yeah.
So I think
Matthew, I completely agree with you about how parts of London can feel completely lawless and how we need to have a more visible presence of police officers. But one could also argue, and I don't think this is an empty argument at all, that perhaps priorities aren't always the best within the police and that it could be managed much better from the top down and from the bottom up. But we must move on to our next topic, another headache for the government. It's Easter Sunday, but the headaches do not go away. Just 215 migrants who crossed the Channel by small boat last year were removed from the country, according to government figures. That's despite record numbers, over 45,000 making the crossing in 2022. According to Home Office data obtained by The Sun newspaper, less than 5 in every 1,000 of those migrants were removed or deported. Still with me, political commentator Matthew Stadlen, research fellow at the Bow Group Benjamin Loughnane. Hello again. Matthew, what do you make of these figures? People will be concerned that there is no deterrent, clearly, because if you arrive on the shores, the likelihood is that you won't be going anywhere.
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is this is another area where huge amounts of mud is going to be slung in both directions in the upcoming election campaign, because it is a lightning rod, isn't it? People feel very, very strongly about it, even if they aren't necessarily affected by it, because it's so visible. If you think in the past, people were stowing away on lorries and perhaps on ferries. Now they're coming on rubber dinghies. It's highlighted an issue. It doesn't mean it's necessarily got worse. It has to be sorted out. It has to be addressed. I think the Conservatives have done a really bad job of doing that. There is a massive, massive backlog. The Home Office, and we know that they have a disastrous recent record, just think about the Windrush scandal, have not got their act together, either under Priti Patel or latterly under Suella Braverman. Suella Braverman doesn't seem to know what she's doing, so she uses incredibly inflammatory rhetoric like invasions and so forth. What's really interesting about these stats that have come out is that at least 6 in 10, so a comfortable majority of people who came in the last year or in 2022, I think will get asylum. So this idea that the majority, that the government wants us to believe that the majority of these people, the majority of whom may be men, but the idea that they are not genuine asylum seekers, the idea that they are somehow economic migrants, has been given the lie. And it depends which newspaper you read. If you read The Sun, you might get a different spin on the statistics, but it is absolutely clear that the majority of these people are genuine asylum seekers, will be given asylum. Their claims need to be processed. Their claims need to be processed really quickly. They then need to be incorporated into our economy and start filling some of the jobs that we've lost because we Brexited.
Well, let's put that to Benjamin, because Benjamin, you are a migration expert. You've done your research in this area for a few years now. People are saying, like Matthew is saying, well, hang on, these people are genuine. You can look at the statistics that show that most of their cases, once they've been processed, are found to be valid. What do you make to that?
Absolutely not. I mean, I've been down to Dover, I've seen people come in, I've watched it myself. You know that a lot of these are single men from the age of around 18 to 35. You know, it's a very clear demographic. And they're coming from places like Albania. And even if they're not coming from places like Albania, they pass through about 5 or 6 safe countries before they get to Britain. So they come from France is their most recent point of departure. There's no war in France, and going further back, there's no war in Albania. The reason they come by these routes is because they can't come in by legitimate routes, and we do have legitimate routes for genuine asylum seekers. And the reason they throw their identification in the water on the way over, and they aren't forthcoming about where they're coming from or what their real name is, or, you know, whatever else. The reason they don't tell us these things is because they're not legitimate asylum seekers, and they know it full well. So this absolute bunkum that somehow these people are refugees, I'm sorry, but it's just simply not true.
Why are 6 in 10 then, if that statistic is correct? And I don't have any reason to believe it isn't, Matthew. If that statistic is correct, then why are they being offered asylum? Benjamin. Oh, we've lost.
Sorry.
Oh, no, we haven't. Go for it, Benjamin.
Sorry, you were saying why are they being offered asylum?
Yes, why are 6 in 10 last year being offered asylum if they're not
because our
genuine?
asylum system is broken. If you have nowhere to return them to because you don't know where they've come from, then they end up in the asylum system for a long time, going round and round while their claim is being processed, and we can't return them until that claim is processed. And they submit one claim, and then if it is rejected, they submit another claim for totally different reasons. And it just goes on a merry-go-round of asylum claims for years and years and years until they can say, well, I've been here so long, I have to stay.
Matthew, do you accept
we need to clear a few things up here, okay? Right? We need to clear a few things up. First of all, someone such as myself, who some people would say on this issue, I'm some sort of far-left loony. Not true. One, the people who are doing the smuggling, very, very bad people, need to be tracked down and put in prison. Two, the Home Office needs to get an absolute grip on the system so that we don't have this backlog. Is it helping no one? It's not helping Benjamin, it's not helping you, it's not helping me, it's not helping the viewers. The people who are going to be given asylum, as I say, they need to be incorporated into our economy so they're not stuck in hotels costing us money or stuck in barracks twiddling their thumbs. They should be working, contributing to our economy. So that's the first thing. So let's not characterise people like me as soft on economic migrants. No, I'm not. What I do think is really important to be clear about. First of all, let's go with the figures. At least 6 in 10 are asylum seekers. Second, you can be, guess what, a single man. You can be an 18-year-old man. You can be a 20-year-old man and be a genuine asylum seeker. My grandfather was an asylum seeker. He was a man coming over here on his own, would probably have been illegal. He was welcomed by this country. And why was he coming here? Because he was fleeing the Nazis. A second point, the Albanians who've been given a big kicking. I've got Albanian friends. I've done an Albanian road trip. Let's not treat these people as bad people. They're not bad people. 28%.
Matthew, it is undeniable.
There's just no war there.
It is undeniable
Let me finish my point, because this is important.
Go on, very quickly.
28% of people, I think, coming last year, but you can check this whether it was last year or the last few years. I think it was last year, were from Albania. That's not a majority. That means 72% were not from Albania. That's the first point. The second point is those who did come, if they don't deserve to have asylum here, they will be sent back to Albania. And the system that it sends them back to Albania, which is a safe country, needs to be sharpened up by the Home Office under Suella Braverman very, very quickly, because it isn't fit for purpose at the moment. Those from Albania who actually are asylum seekers, if they come from if there are certain circumstances in which an otherwise safe country is not safe, they will get asylum. Let's humanise these people.
Mm-hmm.
Let's sort those who do deserve asylum from those who don't, and let's get this system sorted. And it's failing under the Tories.
Well, we've seen actually how the number of people coming from Albania has dropped considerably since they've been said to be a safe country and we're sending people back. So that has acted as a deterrent, at least from Albania. Now, we're not all about politics on GB News Sunday. We have a fun, rather bizarre story coming up next. The Bodyguard musical, I haven't seen the musical, but the film is excellent, was interrupted by rioting audience members trying to sing I Will Always Love You over the actors. The finale of the musical at the Palace Theatre in Manchester was abandoned on Friday night. Security guards stormed the auditorium, forcibly removed fans who were loudly singing along. Right, let's get the views of Matthew and Benjamin. Benjamin, I'd love to get your view on this. Do you think this is a sign of, well, that we've lost our sense of decorum, or are these people just having a bit of fun?
Yeah, I think that it's a bit of fun on the one hand, but on the other hand, you've paid a lot of money to go and see professional singers who've trained very hard to deliver a very good show. Don't go in and sing over them. It's just really quite ignorant and rude. I think, and also the people, there will be a very small minority of people who do sing along. And for the rest of those people who've paid good money to go and listen to good singers, having to listen to these awful, screeching, probably drunk people in the front rows, absolutely belting out the songs to all the wrong music and all the wrong lyrics. I'd probably, as soon as people got kicked out, be going, thank God, those people were so annoying. So yeah, I support it entirely.
I think it was mostly women who maybe had had a bit too much of the old Pinot Grigio or Prosecco. Matthew, I absolutely love to sing, and I was actually told to be quiet at a music festival because I was singing so loudly during an Adele concert. So there you go. I was told to be quiet. It's I Will Always Love You. It's an absolute banger. Can you blame the Mancunians for having a little sing-along?
It is an absolute bang. I don't think they were necessarily from Manchester either. I think they might have come from Liverpool. I'm not sure, but I've been singing. That may be fake news. I've been singing all the way to Salisbury. I'm in Salisbury for a big family Easter. I've taken time out to be on your show, which is why it looks like I'm in a B&B, because I am. But with my wife and I, we were singing all the way up to Salisbury because our 6-month-old was crying. So we've been reduced to singing duets. Listen, if you want to have a sing in the car, sing in the shower, go to the football like I did yesterday at Tottenham. Go and sing with the fans, but don't, for goodness sake, sing when as Benjamin was saying, other people, the vast majority, pay really good money to listen to the professionals do it. If I go to the cinema and there's someone eating stuff behind me in a really loud voice, that irritates me badly enough. So someone ruining one of the great tracks of all time when I've paid 50 quid to go and see it, that's a big no from me.
Well, Dawn Neeson, one of our fellow GB News presenters, says that people shouldn't be allowed to eat in cinemas. I think I've seen her say that, which I think some people would agree with, but I like to have a big bowl of popcorn. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Easter Sunday. Matthew Stadland there and Benjamin Loughlane. You are watching and listening to GB News Sunday with me, Emily Carver. There's lots more coming up on today's show. Former Minister of Northern Ireland and our colleague Arlene Foster have sat down with Bertie Ahern ahead of the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, the man who was the Republic of Ireland's Taoiseach when the agreement was signed. We'll bring you that interview. Plus, we'll be talking about the upcoming junior doctor strikes. This is set to be the biggest round of industrial action yet. The Doctors' Union is demanding a pay rise of 35%. Do you have sympathy with their demands? But before all that, let's take a look at the weather with Jonathan.
Hello there. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. I'm Jonathan Vautry. Do make the most of any dry weather you have throughout the rest of today, because it is going to be turning more unsettled over the next few days. High pressure is losing its influence across the UK and allowing these weather fronts to start pushing their way in from the Atlantic. A squeeze in the isobars as well means that it will be turning breezier for all of us. But into the evening, these fronts will be bringing rain first to Northern Ireland and then into western Scotland, where we could see some heavier bursts at times. Gales through the North Channel and up around other coasts of North Scotland as well. Generally for England and Wales, the rain will be patchier throughout the night, and we will then see some clearer spells developing for Northern Ireland and North West Scotland later on, allowing temperatures to drop down here. But underneath the extensive cloud elsewhere, it will be quite a mild start to Monday morning, but also a fairly damp and soggy one as well. This rain could take some time to clear off southeast England as well as in Shetland, maybe into the afternoon before it eventually disperses. Behind that, Monday will be a day of some sunny spells, but also quite frequent showers pushing their way in, and some of those certainly could be heavy at times with the risk of some hail and thunder. Quite a fresh breeze around still, and temperatures will be down compared to Sunday, more around average for the time of year, between 10 to 14 degrees Celsius. The showers will persist a bit into the evening, particularly across the northern half of the UK. We could still see some wintry flakes across the very higher ground of Scotland. They will ease their way off a bit more as we head into Tuesday, but still a scattering first thing in the morning. It's this rain that's then lingering out in the southwest that we certainly have our eye on for, and that will be pushing its way in for later in the afternoon. And as the low pressure centre develops, it does have the potential to bring quite disruptive winds to western areas of the UK. So we do now have a wind warning in force for Wales.